So let's begin our afternoon session with some reflections on what's emerging from the morning narratives that we heard from different parts of the world, building on some of the sort of key principles that have emerged. We heard, for instance, the principle of equal rights between genders, between people of various kinds. We heard about the collective, about how the I and the we are inextricably linked to each other. There's no individual without society. We heard about the need for collective property rights or collective rights to resources, right, or to commons. We heard about examples of distributed leadership, no hierarchy, but everybody in society having a voice. We heard about the need for constant education and re-education of the kind which helps to create revolutionary processes. Local self-reliance and autonomy, especially for things like food and water and energy and land, so food sovereignty and other such movements. We heard about the need for diversity, of recognizing the diversity of belief systems, diversity of faiths, secularism as in recognizing everybody's right to their own religion or non-religious ways of being. So these were some, and there were many more. Right now, we want to go further into some of these principles, discussions on them. To lead us off, we have Kendall, part of the Kurdish movement, Academy of Democratic Freedom, to talk about Ojalan. I think you're going to give us some, or some other things, whatever.
So yes, I'm Kendall from the Academy of Democratic Modernity. We are mainly working to share the idea on which the revolutionary process in Kurdistan is developed and the practice of it also. So we do seminar formation, popular formation, and publication, translation, and so on. So I wanted to go back also to the slogan we heard a lot. So the slogan of this forum, and that we all know also since years, that another world is possible. So I think it's also very important that we precise what do we mean then by then what is the wrong world? Now what do we criticize? And so which is the world that we want? What is this another world that we are proposing? Because it's very important to have the correct critique of what we want to overcome, because otherwise we could risk to reproduce without willing what we're actually wanting to overcome. And unfortunately, history is full of such example. And then it's also very important to not stop there, because to have the correct critique and to just describe what we don't want is not useful. What is also important is to continue and to develop what do we want. What is the proposition of an alternative? If we are criticizing this world and we want another one, then what is this other world that we want? So I wanted to speak a little bit about the proposition developed by the Kurdish movement and based on which critique also it was developed. So there also we see the fundamental importance of history to understand also what is the roots of the problem we are facing today. And we can see when we look at the official history, as the friend this morning mentioned a bit, the beginning, how the official civilization, the state civilization, how it was constructed on patriarchy and the oppression of women by men, and this continuation that led to the development of state. And we can see also continuation from this time, from the statist civilization until today's oppression of nation state and capitalism and modern form of patriarchy. Again, of course, it's varying in form, but somehow we can see a continuation of this river of oppression from the beginning of the statist civilization until today. So what the word we want to overcome, Jan called it the capitalist modernity, as the modern expression of this 5,000 years of statist, patriarchal, caste-based civilization. He understands it as based on three pillars. On the pillars of the nation state, pillar of capitalism and industrialism. But already what the interest of this is to not focus on the last 3, 4 or 500 years of capitalist hegemony, which a lot of time in anti-capitalist movement, there is a bit this mistake made of only focusing on those last 3, 4, 500 years, without seeing that there is actually a far older continuation of these roots of this system. So this, for the capitalist modernity, or what is this world that we don't want? But then what do we want? No? So like we can criticize, it's very important to have a very deep critique of industrialism, of capitalism, of nation state, of patriarchy, understanding how all these systems of oppression are feeding on each other. Now what do we want? If we criticize nation state, capitalism, patriarchy, what is the alternative proposed? And to see, I said before, there is a river, a continuation of oppression since the beginning of the state centralist civilization. There is also a continuation of resistance since the beginning of this oppression. Always there have been fighting against monopoly of power, against patriarchy, against the state. So it has been seen by the resistance of the woman, of the farmer, of the peasant, of the witches, of the workers, of the slaves, of the nomadic people, of the tribes. There have been always a continuation or so of resistance until today. And this river, this resistance has been surviving until today. And so even if it has been repressed, attacked, criminalized, massacred, still this resistance, this line of resistance is surviving until today. And our presence here from all different struggles in different parts of the world is also a result of this river of resistance. Now what we need is to organize this resistance, to somehow systematize it. And so the proposition, how Abdullah Jan talked about this, is to develop the democratic modernity as opposition to the capitalist modernity, which needs also to be based on three pillars. Now we said capitalist modernity is based on three pillars. So nation state, and how to replace or to overcome nation state through democratic confederalism, that I will talk a little bit later, already mentioned this morning. How to overcome industrialism through eco production or eco industry. So the production based on ecological and social needs. And to overcome capitalist system, a political and moral society, or democratic socialism. Understanding. We have very short time, I think, so I will focus only on democratic confederalism itself. It's a political alternative, concrete proposition of alternative to the nation state. Itself is based on three pillars: women liberation, social ecology, and grassroots democracy. So it's understood as a stateless based democracy based on the federation of decentralized commune with the federation with the council system. And so it's also come with an understanding of revolution as a process. So we have been developing in history different understanding of revolution, often as an event. So there's a before, there's an after. But in our understanding revolution as a process, there may be a start, but there is no end. So it's a process of radical transformation of every aspect of the society and the mentality of the society. And the thing also, the more there is a state, the less democracy there is. And so this process will be increasing the self-organization of the society. And the more we increase the self-organization, the more we diminish the influence of the state inside the society. So it comes also with the strategy. It's not about taking power through election or insurrection, but it's about to build the alternative of every aspect of capitalist modernity, to build its alternative, the self-organized through the commune system, through women's self-organization, youth, and self-defense also. Yes, so I'm reached 7 minutes.
You want to wind up in a minute?
Yes, maybe I can in 30 seconds. So it's a real understanding that state cannot be a tool of liberation. State is a tool of the oppressor, has always been, and so that's why the interest of looking at history, 5,000 years of state is 5,000 years of war, of looting, of destruction, of every aspect of life. And so it cannot be a tool of liberation. So we cannot seek to reach state power to build a better life. And so we need this alternative, to build this alternative, and at every aspect of the life.
I'm going to open it up now for any of you, if you have any reflections from your experiences, if you think there are additional principles or ideas of radical democracy that need to come into the discussion, and then at some point maybe come back to the panel. So who would like to? This is not a mic, it's a Zoom. It's just because it's also being, it's also online, so it's just for the Zoom, the folks who are joining us on Zoom.
Mon nom est Solange Koné. Je suis du mouvement de la Marche mondiale des femmes. Vous avez constaté, nous sommes rentrés à 3. Ma sœur là-bas, elle est de Palestine. Moi, je suis de Côte d'Ivoire, d'Afrique. Donc, nous sommes de la Marche mondiale des femmes.
My name is Solange Kole. I'm from the World Women's March. We came as 3 in the room. So there is a friend from Palestine. I'm from Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire.
Alors, la Marche mondiale des femmes est un mouvement qui promeut les droits des femmes, comme le nom le dit. Et pour nous, nous pensons que la femme est une valeur. Et en tant que valeur, nous ne pouvons pas la prendre comme si elle n'était rien du tout dans la vie.
Women's World March is a movement that is promoting women's rights. And we understand women as values. And it's a value that cannot be taken away.
Alors, je suis rentré dans la salle et j'entends l'anglais. Peut-être que je n'entends pas bien. Mais ce que j'ai entendu, le monsieur, je n'avais pas son nom, qui me permet de parler avec vous. Je le remercie. Je l'ai entendu dire des choses fortes. Et ces choses fortes, il a dit que aujourd'hui la démocratie, nous devons faire en sorte de construire un mécanisme. Et construire le mécanisme voudrait dire que on prenne en compte tout ce qui est femmes, hommes, jeunes. C'est-à-dire prendre la société elle-même de façon globale. Et ça, je me suis dit, voici les propos que la Marche mondiale défend.
When I entered the room, I heard in English and what I could understand and hear from Kendall speaking. I heard strong things being said and the need to build democratic mechanism. And I believe this is also what the World's Women's March need to promote, so to take all women, youth and all part of society so inside those mechanisms.
Alors, je prends la parole pour dire que il y a bien longtemps que nous avons des forums sociaux, que nous avons des rencontres, que nous nous rencontrons partout et nous dénonçons les mêmes choses, nous faisons les mêmes remarques. Il est temps que quelque chose de plus concret advienne. Alors, ici, je prends la parole pour demander qu'est-ce que concrètement on compte mettre en place pour que tout ce que nous avons dit, tout ce que nous proposons soit une réalité. Donc, c'est ma question. Comment est-ce que vous pensez que nous pouvons nous organiser pour aller de l'avant?
So I took the word to speak to say that it's been a really long time that we're having those World Social Forum and that we're having all those international meetings, and we are always saying the same thing. And now it's time for something more. It's time for something concrete. So that's the reason why I wanted to speak now and to ask you the question, how can we organize to move forward and to make some concrete steps?
I'm Anita Rampal from India, and I work in education. So I also I'm relating to the two speakers who spoke about education and what it meant, education with women, education, a kind of re-education, a critical education. We have been working for almost 40, 50 years. We started in the state of Madhya Pradesh with an organization that was called Ekalavya, but now we've taken it across the country with adults, and the organization is BGVS. So it was actually it took from Paulo Freire's ideas of education when we were running the National Literacy Mission, where education was not just learning to read and write, learning to read the world and write the world, but also learning to understand what are resources. They're not meant to be exploited. What is our agency in trying to control the world and the environment around us? And that is something that has had its ups and downs. There's been a time when the whole country, everything was through a volunteer system. And across the states where Kerala had actually given us the strength to do a lot of cultural mobilization through people's voices, people's theater, poems, stories, because we have many different languages, but education restricts the language that a child is forced to speak and restricts then the self-identity and the self-relationship with the world. So we have been trying to do that. And in the last phase of the work in the National Curriculum Framework also, which was 2005 onwards, I happen to be the chairperson of textbooks for primary children, where we brought in true stories of young women, true stories of women fish workers, true stories of a woman who runs a junk cellar, true stories of people who are living by the earth, but who are questioning as to, whose forest is this? Our title of our chapter is also Whose Forest, because that is a contested issue. Today, all that is changing in our country. Those things are going out. The whole subject called environmental studies is thrown out at primary level. And we know that it's probably, the narratives are going to get even more distorted. But I also want to write, when we were talking about working at the grassroots and working for democracy, I just want to bring in a small experience of work that I have done in Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, which is my home state, and in which we know the kind of violence and the conflict that children have been growing up. And I want to say the need to work with children, to work with adolescents, to work with youth. And that, I think, is very critical, because we were surprised. I, with another filmmaker and some theater and creative writers, we had done workshops there of children from refugee camps, which has been divided on the basis of religion. And we brought them together for the first time, very, very sort of hesitantly. We didn't know what will happen, because 14-year-old children had grown up in violence. But it was an amazing experience. Just their coming together when they move beyond their catharsis, the way they understand, the kind of empathy which comes at that age, I think we often miss that. We don't sort of work more on that. So I just want to say, with critical education, with democracy, with autonomy, the role of working with young people is very crucial. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Cyprien. I'm French and 24 years old. So I wanted to answer Solange's question. Merci, Solange, for bringing this topic. I came here as a volunteer, actually, for a project called the Green Silk Road. And the concept is interesting because the whole idea of this project is to develop a powerful network of initiatives, alternatives to current destructive dominant model on the whole Eurasian continent. So it's quite easy. The concept is to travel overland and for all travelers to have several stops inside the local communities who are involved in some kind of project which has a positive impact for society. So it goes from education to renewable energy to social issues, defense of the environment, all kinds of initiatives of that type. It is just beginning, but it's to give a perspective of a concrete idea of how we can move forward. So, because there are many beautiful alternatives existing, and sometimes the problem is that they ignore one each other, and they don't even know that they exist, and they could be way more powerful if they knew each other. And when we meet sometimes between alternative projects, it remains often too much in the talking aspect. Whereas with this kind of initiative for which I am volunteer, we will be trying to put people together to coordinate alternatives and better futures for our society. Thank you. Oh, and I forgot to add that if anybody, any interested project, initiative that you run would fit in this network, please come and talk to me, and I would be very happy to discuss all this with you.
I am Prasanna, and I work for a political organization named the Dialectical Society. It was really nice. The earlier session was really good to hear, and I'd like to add a little comment on my dear friend's propositions that he has said. But first of all, from my side and from the side of Dialectical Society, we'd like to extend our solidarity to the movement he's been part of. We do agree that state is not an empowering tool at all. It is a tool of oppression. It oppresses people, and by mechanism of bureaucracy and military, in essence of their principle, it deteriorates freedom. It creates opaqueness. It doesn't give you the power of transparency. But there is a pragmatic problem named time and space. We have to always be wary of time and space. So we are of the belief that our ideological structures, our ideological frameworks are interpreted or reflected in whatever the political program of our movement is. So you have held some propositions that we agree of women liberation, social ecology, or grassroots democracy, whatever you have said. But given the challenges that we have in this time and space, where our major challenges will always lie on the bigger pharmaceutical industries or bigger military spendings of the state that are big and powerful, imagining another world, as the World Social Forum here is trying to do, without a state in our lifetime. We are of the value that direct democracy is, of course, the way ahead. Direct democracy must be instilled. But imagining a world in our lifetime without the state mechanisms, no matter how radical we become, is really very difficult at this point of time. And there can be some examples of exception which may demonstrate a different world in larger spectrum of things. But the systematic prowess would always lead us to defeat this systematic global system of capitalism, and to defeat it collectively. I think in our lifetime, I'm 23 years old, maybe I'll live another 30-40 years. I don't think it's possible. We must talk. And I'd add a little point and take your leave, that we are of the beliefs that the world is heading towards a right-wing fundamentalist sort of power relations, which will limit democracy. We are also seeing that in terms of economic monopoly. In Nepal too, the monopoly in 4 pillars of its economy, that is the energy resources that fundamentally covers our water, the land that is on terms of agriculture, commodification and geopolitics, the environmental destruction through mining industries, and the labor force of Nepal are under monopoly of multinational companies. And in 3 framework of ideas, in 3 framework of narratives, that is of right-wing fundamentalism, alternative and heroism, we will be witnessing soon a dictatorship of major scale. And this is not a phenomenon that will be exception to Nepal, but a world phenomenon, where we can see that this sort of leader, even Narendra Modi was an alternative to L.K. Advani, Vijay or Vajpayee in India, or even Donald Trump was an alternative to establishment of Republican Party. We are seeing this worldwide. So it's our challenge to come together and build an alliance against this sort of transition and for democracy. That's all. Thank you. I took a bit of time.
Hi, thank you very much to all of you. My name is Aurelia. I'm from France. I'm president of a committee of solidarity with indigenous peoples of the Americas. And I was just thinking that it might be useful. Maybe you said it this morning, but I'm sorry I was not there, to to follow the path created by indigenous peoples. And for example, if we struggle against extractivism, against mega projects and so on, to
speak a little louder.
To think about how we can divest from our banks, the companies that are putting money in those projects, because if we cannot always access to direct action, maybe it can be a way to take part of these processes. And I was just wondering if I can add something. There is a big struggle in French Guyana nowadays, because France still have colonies, of course, and we do not speak a lot about Guyana, but there is a energy mega project that is currently building, and the ones who are fighting the most are the young people. So thank you for adding this point. Maybe we have also not only to follow indigenous peoples, but young indigenous people and women, of course, that because the youngest right now are the ones who are putting their bodies directly on the first line against cops, military, and so on, and they cannot access anymore to schools. And it's crazy to think that even country like France don't care about the youngest, and if it will happen in France, it will be a shame. And so it's happening right now. So I was just thinking that maybe in the future it might be useful not only to have like a forum about with young people, but maybe an entire World Social Forum made by young people. And that's it. Thank you. And we are going to show a movie about this topic in 2 days. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention.
Thank you. A Youth World Social Forum. Great idea. I hope somebody takes that forward. Anybody else?
Because in the morning you mentioned people may want to discuss ideas, and people like Marx and Ambedkar and Gandhi and all. So I was just thinking there is one word Marx has used which is quite central to his thought, and the word is alienation. And today we are experiencing that alienation at different levels, cultural, social, ecological alienation, and at an individual level. So the point I wanted to just make, a small point, is that we need to get back to this central notion, because we often forget that when we speak about social transformation, what we are also talking about a new humanity. That's what I think Marx spoke about and many other people spoke about. And if we have to reach there, we have to think philosophically in some ways and address the issue of alienation, and how do we overcome this alienation to bring back the maybe romantic idea of bondedness at a deeper, essential level of what it means to be human being, as well as what it means to be amongst non-human beings. Yeah, that's the point I want to make.
I am Nyana from India. I'm sorry I was not here in the morning, so I could not really vibe with whatever is being said. But then in the short time I am here, one question came to my mind. Maybe if we can kind of clarify, I'll be very happy. When Kendall was speaking, he denounced, a nation state in a very powerful manner. Probably he, from his own experience, he is doing that. And when my friend right there, when he said his life is short, I think his concern is that if you are speaking against state, then what kind of, a government will be there wherein we will address our issues, our difficulties, or how we will construct a democracy if there is no state. I thought that is his kind of concern. So my question here is, are we imagining some kind of a radical democracy without a state apparatus? because, coming from India, the subaltern had a lot of hope on the state. Leave alone the elitists, leave alone the capitalists. Of course, they have used it for their own purpose. But as Ambedkar said, that the subaltern people pin their hope on the performance of the state, especially with instruments like reservation and things like that. So if we don't have a state which ensures such kind of empowering projects, what kind of democracy are we speaking about is the question that comes to my mind. I'm sorry if I'm actually not out of tune with this.
Absolutely right. Actually, part of the discussion was to be the tense relationship with the state. So radical democracy, but then, as he said, you said the state does exist. Morning also, we said the state does exist right now. It may not in the future. In some places, it doesn't exist already. But insofar as it's there, what is our relationship with it? So that is a crucial question for all of us, right? Does anybody want to respond to this?
Actually, the main mistake that we always witness in our analyze and our understanding of the system is that the system controlling everywhere, and this is really not right. In nowhere, even in a European country where I am there in 25 years, no nation state controlled everything. There is always spaces that the people could reorganize themselves. Even that I see it in a lot of countries. Like I see it in Kurdistan, in my homeland, in 4 parts that have been divided among Turkey, Syria, Iran, and Iraq. So much oppression, double oppression on a woman. Even though that people still, they find the spaces how they could reorganize themselves. The mistake is that really the state is not as strong. We are not well organized. Capitalism is not so strong. We are not well organized as a society. We have to, in which corner we look at the system, we should really be aware very well. Are we looking at the system in the view of the capitalist modernity, as Kendall said, or we look at the system and all fields that attacking us in everyday daily life? Are we looking at the system and analyzing it and searching for the solution in the view of the democratic modernity or not? This is the problem. We cannot reach our freedom by the tools of the capitalist modernity. So we have to go out mentally and physically. We have to go out of the system. If we don't totally divorce from the system, we cannot build. We cannot build the new. We cannot build the new with the old tools, old ideas that have been a lot of time experienced. We experienced it a lot of time election, but all the political parties that come into the power, they're doing the same thing. And actually now, all over the world, we witnessing not just a lack, we lose the hope. And this is in some condition is important. We lose the hope from the system, and this is important, and this is right. But we have to really be aware that to search for a new hope, with a new knowledge, with a new thoughts, with a new vision, with a new to reconstructing ourselves. I will give one example from Hebal Heza. Heza, she's a woman, Yazidi woman from Shangal. Maybe it's a very, very good example to how the people really can be able to regaining their old knowledge, to reorganizing themselves again. And Heza, she was from Shangal. Shangal is a part of north of Iraq, which is a part of Kurdistan in the same time, south of Kurdistan, occupied by Iraq, of course, nation state of Iraq. And they are believing in Zoroastrian and Yazidi. And they are being attacked like in last 1,000 years, 72 times they've been massacred. These people. The last time was 2014 in Shangal, when they've been attacked by ISIS with the help of Turkey. Minimum 4,000 women have been captured, have been enslaved, have been sold, like openly, have been sold, and they show it in videos, publish it. They publish it in a so-called social medias, and they brought these women to Raqqa. Raqqa, maybe everybody of you that know that Raqqa was the capital of ISIS. When SDF forces, YPG forces, they liberate Raqqa. Before liberating Raqqa, Heza, she was one of the women that have been brought, have been raped a lot of times, have been tortured, have been sold a lot of times to the different man, like a man that they were a part of ISIS. When she ran away from Raqqa, and they ran away to Rojava territory, and they helped her, and they brought back to Shangal after liberating of Shangal by women fighters, guerrilla fighters. She joined the forces of Union of Women Defenders in Shangal, and till that time, Raqqa was not liberated from ISIS. She joined the forces, and she went to Syria to be a commander of one union of women to liberating Raqqa. And this is very, very good example. If you have a will to free life and to defend your people and to organize your people, no forces can be obstacle of you in front of you. If you have a will to reorganize yourself, if all the world is behind you, if you don't have a will to liberate yourself, you cannot liberate yourself. No, liberate your society. So will is one of the main principle of the women liberation ideology of a Kurdish women movement. Free will, free thought, struggle, organization, and be connected to your land and your society. Actually, most of the social movements, feminist movement, they are now working and they are disconnected from the society. They are not connected with the society. They are fighting each other. They are fighting just for the power. We should have a mechanism of self-criticism. So this is really very, very important to reorganize. Reorganizing yourself could be starting from 5% that really believing in a liberation. And you can circulating this positive energy inside the people and giving hope to the people, because the people lose hope and the people really surging a new hope. And this is really, I think, very, very important.
Thank you. I think this issue of the relationship with the state is always a difficult one. We have so many examples like the ones we've heard of them having been able to break free from the state. But there are others where it's continues to be complicated. Now, so the Indian example I gave in the morning of them saying that we elect the government in New Delhi, we make them accountable. In our village, we are the government. This is a small village in central India. So I think there are many different negotiations that are also ongoing. Even Abdullah Öcalan said that insofar as we remain within the boundaries of a nation state, we will have to negotiate. But we negotiate from a point of strength, our will, as you're saying, right? So I think these are some of the ways. It may not happen in the next 2 generations, but we have to keep fighting. I mean, certainly not going to happen in my lifetime, but I think you're still another 60 years to go. So it might. But I think these are the struggles we have to keep making. And I think for us, why this session is important is to see if we can make these connections more and more, build further solidarity, strengthen each other, support each other in times of trouble. Whenever the state attacks us or corporations attack us, then we have 100 organizations around the world who can stand up and speak in solidarity. That's the kind of thing we need to do more.
Hi, I'm Glauber. I came from France. I work in a network of NGOs of international solidarity called CRID. Just a question, actually, in the sense of your last talk. What is the material mechanism that you put in your struggles, local struggles, to connect these local struggles? Because I know, like Global Tapestry and other initiatives, that we connect in the reflection level, in exchange of experience, but intellectual level. But how we work with the material level, the material solidarity, if you have examples, if you have something to say about that, how you do. We know the connection between the Zapatista and Rojava, but if the others do the same kind of things, we create something like that. It's going to be a good experience.
I think that's the most intriguing part of this will, whether it is a will at the individual level or the will at the community level. I feel the will comes from your context, your surrounding, is whether it is probably in the childhood, Anita. It depends on how you raised and what is the mindset. But of course, it can occur otherwise also. We had a young woman in Manipur, and she saw atrocities, very young woman, 23 probably at that time, or maybe younger, and she stopped eating. So it is like something that you will not accept. Or the tribal rebellions that we've had where it doesn't matter what the odds are, but their reason for existence, they do not find that they can exist if they accept what is in front of them. So where to find that will? So that's my question to you. How to find that will?
Yes, of course, that's a central part. How we go beyond the exchange and the discussion, the sharing of experience, which are very important, but of course not enough. So we have a brochure that I put on the table this morning, but everybody took it in the first session, but maybe I have some more. It's the paradigm of democratic modernity as a perspective for a new internationalism. We wrote this with the Academy of Democratic Modernity. And it's a bit exploring also those ideas. We have it in French also that can be downloaded by PDF, but the idea is also to build democratic platforms that are coordinated both regionally and also internationally. We are in the process of building those international ones. So we're having meeting conferences on a global scale. But I think a working example of regional platform is what has been also developed with different democratic forces from Turkey itself. So like the revolution of Rojava was of course from the Kurdish movement, but also democratic forces organization from Turkey have been also fighting in Rojava because there is some democratic platform from the region. So this is an example of collaboration regionally from different forces that have also different ideology. I don't have exactly, but that's also the goal, to build those platforms with a plurality of ideology, because mistakes in the past were the attempt of imposing one ideology and suppressing others. So the proposition is to have not like a base of values and perspective, but a plurality of ideology. And maybe to not go too long, we'll just stop now, but all those brochures are available in multiple languages on internet to be downloaded in PDF.
Okay, I just remind ourselves that the word internationalism is internations. Yes. So how do we grapple with these, the legacies of different philosophies? And so I thought we could maybe also talk a little, because in the description to this panel, we hear about Gandhism, Marxism. So I would like to ask also, how would you see the legacies from Gandhism, from Marxism or Maoism or other schools of thought, and how those, whether they are compatible with each other or whether they need to be rejected?
Mm-hmm. You want to respond to the will thing, and then we'll come to this question?
Yeah. I think it's a really very big question, and I did need a lot of time to respond. But shortly, I will say that we have this like a will from our ideology. And this ideology is come from the struggle over 50 years, which is the key person or key character, key like a philosopher is Abdullah Öcalan. Abdullah Öcalan started from the very small group and believe in that we can liberate, but we should start from one thing. We should start from ourselves. Everything we search, we have to start from ourselves. And first started from the education, from the analyzing the family, analyzing of the situation that the women face in the society, searching for the alternative among the Kurdish society themselves, not out. We started from that, and we built like a step by step our ideology by involving everybody. The revolution was not based on an elite, like the people just talking and the other people doing. Everybody involved. It could involve workers, farmers, every parts of the like a society could involve in this revolution without distinction, without make differences between the societies. And we actually worked with the society. We didn't work on a society. And our ideology, our science, genealogy, is based on this view that we work with the society. And also a lot of steps we tried to connect theoretical part to the practical in the same time. Every time we try something, we came back, as Rohar said, we criticize ourselves what we did mistake, and how we can go forward. And actually, Öcalan proposed a lot of theories and concepts during this 50 years. Like for one of them is a separation theory. He said that to women to rebuild themselves and to also to build their autonomous structures, they should separately they should do it. They should separately, even physically and mentally, they should disconnect themselves from the from this mentality of the patriarchal mentality, from the state, even from the society. Because if you want to rebuild yourself, you have to disconnect from all this backwards mentality that we learn from the state, we learn even from this dogmatic of religion, and also from this traditions that traditions that enslaving us. And also by going to the roots of our history, where we lost. Öcalan actually referring to the methodology and religion, and saying that there is two main ruptures in the history. One of them is done by the period of mythology, and also the second is by monolistic religions. So we have to go back and to analyze that, not to regain the same condition that women has. Of course, we have to learn from what we lost. Why women being enslaved by a lot of actually, one of the things that Öcalan also proposed, that if you want to reach the truth, you have to really analyze methodologies, because methodology give us a key how our mentality been shaped. Because there is a lot of methodologies that there is a breaking of the power of the women, that the mythologies of the Middle East is full of the stories that shape our mentality. For example, the mythology of Gilgamesh, the mythology of Anuma Alish, that creating the universe, how they cut the body of the woman in two, and that they said to the society, these two parts, it never come again. So this is really important to give the tool to us, how we can learn from our past history and how we can refresh our ideology. And actually, the women liberation ideology have been proposed by Öcalan, that in the time that Fukuyama say, no, the time of ideology is finished. We don't need any more ideology that it's end of the history, but it was not end of the history. We are facing like a new liberal system that every day we facing genocide, femicide, ecocide, and epistemocide. This all multiple side we face every day in our life. So to be shortly to be summarizing that, we actually take our will from our struggle. And one thing more that's very, very important for us as a woman: if women not liberate, society never been liberate. This is a short speech from Öcalan that always we have to repeat it, in Quran, always starting from Bismillah. This is always for us if we don't liberate ourselves, we cannot liberate the society, and we cannot even force a man to liberate themselves, because the big mistake that man seeing themselves as they are free, but in fact they are also slave of the system as women. So man to be free, also to be joined in this freedom struggle. This is very, very important.
Just a quick, I think, Kinchi, your question is absolutely crucial. Yes, we did want to actually get into Gandhi, Marx, feminist theorists and practitioners, indigenous people, etc. But as always, we are running out of time. Just a quick mention of, which also responds a little bit to this question of the state. I think, at least in my readings, I'm finding a lot of very interesting parallels between Öcalan and Gandhi, which is interesting because, in fact, I think very recently only Öcalan also read Gandhi and said something about him from prison. But for instance, when you're talking about practice and theory going together, one informing the other all the time, and this is something that he also lived all his life. Or Swaraj is his concept of self-determination and freedom and autonomy, but importantly, freedom and autonomy and self-determination with responsibility towards others. It's not the American notion of freedom where, I can run my SUV wherever I want and I can bomb a country if it does not give me cheap petrol. So it's a very different notion. So in that sort of also then the self transformations that you spoke about, spiritual and other self transformations, also how can I live my life in such a way with restraints so that my freedom is not impinging on somebody else's freedom. He also spoke very much, he said the state is the enemy of the people. But at the same time, he understood that there is a state. The government of India is going to be formed after freedom from the British colonial rule. So how should the state be responsive to people, which would include some of the points that you were making about the state also as a means of reform to some extent. But I think we're all seeing the limits of that now and the inherent problems with the nation state that our colleague spoke about. Democratic confederalism. How every small radical democratic unit can confederate over a larger scale. Gandhi spoke about oceanic circles. Every village is its own republic, but then you connect to the next and the next, and like these ripples in a sea of water, right? So I think there's a lot of, there are differences also, but a lot of connections. And I think one thing, Kinchi, that we're seeing with many people's movements is that they don't necessarily make these walls that academics do. Us activists and academics sometimes make these walls between Ambedkar and Gandhi and Marx and feminists and so on. But people's movements on the ground, especially those who are actually struggling for practical radical democracy and so on, they're putting together whatever they feel is relevant at that point in time. A Dalit women's movement in India will be speaking Ambedkar, but we'll also be talking about Gandhi and non-violence. We'll also be talking about spiritual ecology, because they work with the earth and with seeds and consider them to be sacred. So it's a very interesting, I think, at the practical level of revolutions and things on the ground, I think it's very interesting that a lot of things come together where we might be making those sort of essential differences. So I just wanted to add that. And also, of course, I spoke to some time back one of the leaders of the Standing Rock movement in Northern America against the pipelines. And Pat McCabe, a Native American woman, and she said, we practice sacred activism. So we said, what is that? She said, very hardcore activism. We're in the front, we're standing against the bullets and all of that. But at the same time, we have all of our spiritual traditions to carry us through. Every morning we wake up and we do prayers to the ground and the earth and so on. And then we are there out in the front lines standing against bullets. So there's lots of very interesting mixes that are taking place, which I think we need to learn from. I just want to ask if anybody has any thoughts on how do we go from here. As I said, we have all of your connections, hopefully in that little sacred little black book. And we will be writing to all of you and connecting you through this. We will also, if you're all right, we'll put you on some of the listservs. There's a Global Tapestry of Alternative listserv. There's also a Radical Ecological Democracy one, and maybe some of the others have their own listserv, GSU, etc. So we can put you on those. If you don't want, you can please request to be out of them. But beyond that, if anybody has ideas on how we can connect further to take the ideas of radical democracy that much further and spread them wider. Any thoughts in the last few minutes?
Thank you. I'm Inigo Gurem from Calcutta Andoan, NGO from Basque Country in Spain. And sorry? Okay. Okay. And my question is, when you start in the introduction this morning, you were talking about democracy among also other species. So this comes to the rights of nature. I think, like in Ecuador or Bolivia, they have started working on that, and there are also some new laws in Europe, also in India, I think. I think that can be really a good tool to fight against the system we have, capitalism. But at the same time, the feeling I had is that day by day, the human beings we feel more separate from nature. So when we talk things about nature, we always think that we have to go to the sea, we have to go to the jungle. But here also, it's nature, no? It's full of nature. But usually we don't realize. So I don't know if you can explain us some activities or actions that you are doing here among that.
Okay, so I think, you're right that the rights of nature has become now a growing movement in many parts of the world as a legal tool that you give nature or elements of nature like a river or a mountain or another species the rights of personhood. And because of that, there is a possibility of then saving a river from a dam or saving a particular species that is threatened. And people have even fought, there are cases in the name of river X or mountain Y or species X saying that you are violating my right to exist, which of course some human beings filing, but on behalf of that species or that entity, natural entity. So that is a growing movement, and I think in some senses it's positive. But from our perspective, at least certainly in India, what we've been saying is that this could be one step, but we need to go beyond that to go back to the idea of living in respect within nature, beyond legal tools, because legal tools have their own problems. And this is all mostly Western law or jurisprudence that is used. So Western jurisprudence has its own issues, right? So there'll be a battery of lawyers on that side, and there'll be a battery of lawyers on this side. And of course, the power of the corporations and all is much greater. So not instead of that, but beyond that, how do we rebuild our relationship within nature? Exactly what you're saying. To also be aware of the nature in this room and around us. Non-human nature around us, not just have to go to a tiger reserve for that. But this also relates, I think, to Anita's points about education. That unless this is built from the beginning as a child, wherever we are, the sense of alienation, which he spoke about, which is also Marxist, great rift, right? Yeah. The metabolic rift between humans and nature. This will never be healed. And I think this is our big challenge. How do we change the education system? How do we rebuild the possibilities of children connecting with the rest of nature, including in a city? And how do we learn from those who are still doing it? People who are still actually having lives in which that is a natural connection. Doesn't have to be taught. So this is it's a huge, it's a big challenge. And I think here, to me, a lot of spiritual faiths might be very relevant. Newly reinterpreted religions also. Religions newly reinterpreted. So amongst Buddhism, for instance, Milind would know this more, the socially engaged Buddhist kind of thing, or liberation theology in Christianity, or many others. I hope that in Hinduism also something will start soon, because it's going. Yeah.
has written an entire book on Hindu liberation.
Okay, so yeah. So actually, in that sense, trying to get religions to go back to the spiritual roots, which were about solidarity, which were about love, which were about being with the earth and so on, and with nature. So I guess we need all of these to be part of what we're talking about, so that radical democracy is not just for human beings, but for all of life. And there again, learning from indigenous peoples, I think the point you were making, learning from indigenous peoples who are still practicing some of that. And how do we then bring that into the modern world? So, yeah, lots of questions still. But I think many people are attempting to do these things. Even in genealogy, I think working with the earth is very much fundamentally there, right? So the ecological perspective is working with other species. I don't see much of that in the World Social Forum, though. So this is something we don't see: the animal rights groups, the deep ecology groups. And of course, some of this is because there are conflicts between them and the social ecology folks. But I think more of that flavor needs to come in to World Social Forum also.
The two things I wanted to sort of reflect on was the role that fear and the fear of scarcity plays on how we function as groups, and how it's being played on creating these realities that we're currently living. And in a group like this, and maybe even as ways forward, I think the idea of building courage, and how can we build courage to stand up for the things we believe in. And it's really, it's very glaringly evident today in the world, where with so much of genocide and ecocide and femicide going on so blatantly on live camera, in fact, people who believe in it or believe that it should not happen are so afraid to speak up, even behind the screen of social media. And often that's a little scary, because when you're looking at it, we do know people who are supporting these movements but are afraid to stand up, even though there is no real tangible threat. There's no gun pointed at them, but they're still afraid. So I think that is one very key aspect that we as a community or as humanity, we need to face. And how can we rebuild the courage and how to face, to stand up for ourselves, to stand up for what we believe in, and to stand up for the community, for each other, for nature, for all living beings and the system. And the other is a concept of abundance, because scarcity is the most powerful way there exists to get people to turn against each other. And we're seeing it happen everywhere. We're seeing it happen in every city. And the whole extractivist idea is just entirely built on scarcity, because, okay, if you don't have your own land, if you don't have your own car, if you don't have your own private enclave of nature, which no one else can come into, you control whether the monkeys come in, you control which birds decide to exist. This is what is really sort of dividing the world from and all of it is, of course, as we all know, driven by corporate agendas and driven by sort of powers who we don't know who they are, but we do know that they exist, and and it's all about control. But I think there's a lot of power within the individual and also the community or the collective to harness this power, this courage, and the idea of abundance, which can help us sort of fight this from ground up, from within. There's a lot of power when you understand there's abundance, there's enough for everyone. There's always the ability to then share, and then there's no fear of sharing wisdom, of sharing land, of sharing information, and also of accepting this. And somebody else's ideology is not aligning with ours. If there's no threat and if there's no scarcity, it's easier from a mindset change to accept that. So these were the two things that, even as a way forward, I was thinking that these are things within our control in terms of how we perceive and realign ourselves every single day. But also it can start as fears of fears of inclusion and spreading. That's just what.